penultimate episode of Shadowhunters Season 2. Can you believe that that was the second to last episode this season? It has gone so quick. We only have one episode left. Where is time going? It's just going so quick. So episode 19, Hail and Farewell. It was a very tense episode because we had the Shadowhunters and the Downworld on the brink of war. Anything could just snap at any given moment and mess up everything. The characters were very stressed and it was all about the chase when it came to Valentine and Jonathan. Both sides wanted to catch them and it was sort of a race against time to see who would get there first. We also got to see Valentine and Sebastian panic a lot in this episode because they are always so confident and smug in their plans and what they're doing. Whereas in this episode, because both the Downworlders and Shadowhunters were clamping down on them, we got to see them unravel a bit. And it was great to see them in that position. I'm going to start talking about the Shadowhunters and the Downworlders in this episode. Over the course of this season, we have watched the relationship between them shift a lot. There has been more and more tension between them, and we've come close to seeing the Downworlders go against the Accords a lot more recently in the show. In this episode, that relationship comes very close to snapping. Last week we saw Magnus make the decision to side with the Seelie Queen because he believes that that is what is best for the Warlocks and the Downworld in general. This week we had a scene between him, Luke and Raphael at his apartment where he was telling them about this meeting that was going to happen in the Institute, and he explained that he had already made the deal with the Seelie Queen to protect the Warlocks in Brooklyn. She would allow the Warlocks and other Downworlders that joined her to take refuge in her court. You can see how much Luke and Raphael doubt this, and they doubt whether Magnus has made the right decision. Magnus does actually say that he believes that the Seelies can't lie, but he doesn't say that he trusts them entirely. I'm still not sure whether this was the right move for Magnus, and I didn't expect him to make this kind of move. Honestly, I thought if any of the Downworlders would do this kind of deal, then it would probably be Raphael. But I liked how in this episode you could tell that he didn't really want to do this. So I was quite surprised that it was Magnus that made that first move towards the Seelie Queen, and we had Luke and Raphael trying to be the voice of reason. I'm still trying to figure out whether Magnus made this decision purely based on how much he wants to protect the Warlocks and the Downworld, or whether he is still letting some of his emotions from his relationship with Alec affect the decisions that he makes because of those secrets that the Clave has been keeping and stuff like that. So this meeting that happens in the Institute, the Seelie Queen is present. This was a perfectly awkward scene. It was awkward to watch, but it was great too. You had Magnus and Alec coming face to face for the first time since the drama that happened in the last episode, and you could clearly see the tension that was there. The Seelie Queen made it very clear that she spoke for the Downworld and that she wasn't going to let them help the Shadowhunters find Sebastian and Valentine. The others are very shocked by this news because they weren't expecting the Seelie Queen to be speaking on behalf of all of the Downworld. So Alec looks to Magnus for confirmation. That's when we learn that the rest of the Downworld have done this deal with the Seelie Queen as well. So that is quite an awkward moment for the characters. Then after that meeting, we have this really lovely scene between Luke and Clary. We have this really sweet moment between them where Clary hugs Luke, showing us that no matter what happens between them, that she's always going to love him like a father. And I felt so sorry for them in that moment as well, because it's not their fault that they are on different sides. Luke has to stick with his pack and protect them. Clary is a shadow hunter. She has to be at the Institute and help her friends. So it's a difficult situation for them, but I love that we were given that moment between them. I also really loved the conversation between Raphael and Izzy, and we had Raphael giving a heartfelt apology for what had happened between them. I think that scene kind of tied up the loose ends between Raphael and Izzy as well. Obviously they tried with a relationship, but it didn't work. So I think this kind of closed that chapter. Later on in the episode we had some warlocks gathering at Magnus's apartment. We got to see Madsy again. I was so happy that she was back in the show and that she finally put a smile back on Magnus's face. He was just so genuinely thrilled to see her and it was lovely. What completely broke my heart is when Magnus walked into his apartment and looked at the pictures of him and Alec from a photo booth. I did not need that. I really didn't. Thank you for throwing those emotions at me. They were much appreciated. Also, We finally got to meet Katerina! She has been mentioned quite a lot in the show so far, and I think we saw a picture of her, but we've never actually met her. She was in Magnus's apartment with the other warlocks in this episode, and we got a great little scene between her and Magnus. Oh! I love her already. I've only seen that tiny clip of her, but I love her and I can't wait to see more of her. The warlocks put up wards around New York so that anyone with Nephilim blood can't get in or out of the city, or they will be vaporized. They do this by order of the Seelie Queen. Those wards definitely get Valentine on edge. We had this scene in a children's playground where I assume he and Sebastian were glamoured. Otherwise that would have been quite a hilarious sight to see Valentine walking around with this massive ass sword on his back whilst children are playing in a sandpit. And we see that Valentine and his other circle members have a warlock that is doing magic for them. Valentine forces him to try and create a portal because Valentine now knows that Lake Lynn is the mirror, so him and Sebastian need to get to that. This warlock can't open a portal, and that's when he explains about the wards. And then the wolves come in as well, trying to attack. Valentine and Sebastian get out of there. I just loved getting to see Valentine panic throughout this episode. The two of them actually split up at some point because Valentine explains that he needs to go to a place that is too dangerous for Sebastian, and he convinces his son to remain in New York, to hold off the Institute. Valentine launches into this speech about how brilliant Sebastian is and that he is all he could have hoped for. And you just can't help but wonder whether he actually means any single word of that, or whether he's just saying it to get Sebastian to stay where he is. But it obviously works on Sebastian because he promises that he will kill them all. He's so extra. Before Valentine leaves him, he creates a bunch of Forsaken. As if he wasn't rude enough already, he ruins a funeral because Valentine is like that. That poor gravedigger and these poor mourners end up being turned into Forsaken. So before I start discussing the end of that episode in that battle with the Forsaken, let's talk about how the Shadowhunters managed to find where Sebastian is. It is thanks to Clace. Well, it was Clary's idea actually. She has this vision of her and Jace working together to track Sebastian. So she believes that something about this angelic blood that both her and Jace have can create this connection where they are able to track Sebastian. So that gives us this really great Clace moment. Clary thinks up this rune that she has to draw on Jace. After the difficult job of finding some spare skin to put this rune on. Such a hard job, I mean, what a difficult task. She puts this rune on his chest and he ends up glowing, and then she ends up glowing, and they have this moment where they hug. I'm not sure whether that was part of the plan to track Sebastian, or whether that's something that they just did naturally because they're soulmates and they are meant to be. But it managed to be a very intimate scene without any kissing or anything else. It was just the two of them working on this task together, and they connected over it. So I really enjoyed the way this scene was done, and I liked how it was shot as well. The way they glowed looked super pretty. I am definitely liking how the show is building the relationship between Clary and Jace. I mentioned this last week as well. It doesn't feel rushed or forced, it's just happening naturally. So I am enjoying getting to see it unfold. So because of that moment between them, I assume they are able to track down Sebastian, figure out his location. So that leads to Clary, Jace, Izzy and Alec ending up in this same graveyard that Sebastian is in at the end of the episode. These scenes in the graveyard, I just loved everything about them. They had to split off into pairs, and I loved Clary and Jace immediately saying, "I'll be with Izzy, I'll be with Alec." Poor Alec and Izzy are just standing there like, okay! Whilst they're getting ready to fight with their weapons out, we have the difference between Izzy and Alec. Izzy is trying to encourage Clary to talk about Jace, whereas with Alec and Jace, Jace is thankful that Alec's not making him talk about it. The actual fighting scenes with the Forsaken were shot really well. It just looked so good. And then we have Sebastian arriving and calling Jace brother, and he drags him off. Alec was dragged off somewhere by a Forsaken, but manages to get out of that and help Clary and Izzy. They realise that Jace has been taken and try to go after him, but there are more Forsaken approaching, so they have to get rid of them. And I love what Clary did in this moment, because she told Izzy to go after Sebastian because of her whip. Because they know that that whip stands a better chance of hurting Sebastian than any of their other weapons. So even though it's Jace, and Clary is clearly in love with Jace, her instinct must have been to go after him, but instead of following that instinct, she's thinking with her brain, she's thinking about tactics, and she tells Izzy to go after him instead, while she stays and works with Alec. I just really loved that moment. I thought it was brilliant. It shows that she's learned not to let her emotions get in the way of the task. If someone else is more efficient for the job, then that person must go and do it. So that was a really great moment. This scene on the bridge where Sebastian drags Jace and starts chaining him up. I loved everything about this scene, because we finally got a conversation between the two Jonathans, whilst Jace actually knows who he's speaking to this time. We see Jace constantly teasing Sebastian throughout this scene as well, and I was really happy with his dialogue, because it felt very Jace. Jace in the show is the one character I think varies a lot from his character in the books. I sometimes don't think he has the same kind of humour and personality that book Jace has. Even though I really adore Jace in the show, I adore him in his own way, I still think he's one of the characters that has quite a lot of difference from his book character. Whereas in this scene, he was just very Jace from the books, saying these petty little things to Sebastian to try and encourage him to fight instead of just chain him up. So I was really happy with Jace's character in this scene and the way it was written. And of course it does work, because Sebastian lets him down from the chain and they properly fight. And you have Sebastian talking about what Valentine has taught him about this place to stab a person. And I love how Jace kept his wit throughout this scene. When he mentioned it being a fight to see who the best JC was, he still had his sarcasm throughout everything, which is accurate to what book Jace would do. Sebastian seems to overpower Jace at one moment and he gets him on the ground, but then Izzy arrives just in time. This speech from Izzy was just iconic, where she talks about how she trusted Sebastian, let him into the Institute and around her family, and she spoke about what he'd done to Max, her baby brother. I just loved everything about this scene. You had her using her whip to try and get to him, and then whilst she is talking at him, Jace runs that blade straight through that special spot Sebastian was talking about that cuts through the spine and the heart. And I love how Jace said that Valentine taught him that too. Iconic moment, literally iconic. Sebastian falls into the river, seemingly dies. That's not the end of him, we know that from the books. He goes off in that river, but they never recover his body, so I assume the show is going in that same direction. I just really loved everything about these final 20 minutes of the episode. After all that drama has happened, we have this really great moment between Clary and Jace, when Jace is recovering from his wounds that Sebastian gave him. Clary is getting upset over the fact that if the timing had been a little bit different, then Jace could have been the one that ended up dying. We finally get a kiss that's not uncomfortable because they are not siblings and it's not being forced upon them. It's a kiss because they want to kiss. And also we had Ruel singing in the background. You can't have a special moment in Shadowhunters without Ruel being present. Where would we be without Ruel's music? So I really loved how that scene was done, and I think it was a great way to end this episode for those two, because we know that everything's probably going to go to shit in the next episode. So another character I want to talk about in this episode is Maya, and also Simon as well. We had a really lovely conversation between Maya and Simon, where the two of them establish the fact that they are dating. And it's such a cute scene because Simon's thinking about all the normal things in his life. The fact that he hasn't been to his classes, the fact that he's now got a girlfriend, and how that feels normal compared to everything else that's going on. It was such a really sweet and pure scene between the two of them. But then Clary interrupts and has to remove Simon from the situation. I loved that we had a conversation between Simon and Clary in this episode, because I have missed scenes with the two of them. I also loved how relaxed this scene was as well. There was no awkwardness or tension between them. This time apart that they've had has worked for them both. Clary is genuinely happy for Simon and Maya, and their friendship is getting back on track. So I was super happy with this talk between them. It felt like we were getting back to old Clary and Simon. Clary asks Simon to speak to the Seelie Queen when they were having the Downworld meeting and the Shadowhunters walked in. The first thing she said was, where is Simon? I was like, same, I can relate. I too ask where Simon is in every scene. So it's pretty clear to the others that she has a certain liking for Simon. So Clary decides to send Simon to speak to her to see if he can help persuade her. This scene with him on the bridge I had already seen before the episode because it was released at Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago, where we finally found out that Sarah Hyland is playing the Seelie Queen, just an older version of her. I kind of thought this was going to happen anyway. I am so happy that we got her in the show as the Queen. I don't know how long she's going to be playing the role for, but I hope that she continues as the Queen for a while. This scene between her and Simon was really great, because when she starts asking Simon to join her side again, he still completely denies her, and he doesn't show any intimidation in that moment either. Even though she talks about how no one denies her and how her side will be the winning side, he just doesn't care. He's not going to turn his back on Clary and the Shadowhunters. I love how he sassed her a little bit as well by saying that she better get used to rejection. Yes, Simon, you tell her. So that idea didn't really work out the way they'd hoped. At the very end of the episode, Maya actually wakes up in the Seelie court, and we get to see Meliorn again, who says that the Queen is just doing something important and that she'd be with Maya after that. So then we see what the Queen is up to. She is meeting with Valentine, and this is where the two of them strike a deal, and the episode ends with the two of them walking off arm in arm. They are quite an intimidating pair, aren't they? I am assuming that the Seelie Queen has taken Maya to get back at Simon for rejecting her, and also as a way to blackmail him to be on his side. That's what I'm thinking anyway, but I don't know. Who knows what the Seelie Queen has planned. So yeah, they were the big things that happened in this episode. I was wondering if this episode might feel a little bit like the calm before the storm, but it really wasn't. It was quite fast-paced from the start, especially that second half of the episode. There was just so much going on. I'm so excited for the season finale next week. I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to fit everything in, because I'm assuming they are going to do it like they did in the books and have that unfortunate thing that happens to Jace. I'm just panicking about whether they have enough time to do that in one episode. As always, if there is anything that I have forgotten to mention in this video that you would like to discuss, then feel free to leave it in the comments. Also, what are your predictions for next week? What do you think is going to happen in the season finale? I don't know how I'm going to cope without Shadowhunters in my life after next week. So I will be back next week to talk about the season finale. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!